Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cougar Dash. I am Ryan Root, followed by my co-host here, Cody Schoeler, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some WSU basketball today. Last week went 1-1 against the Oregon schools. The upset victory against Oregon for their first ever win in Matthew Knight Arena in Eugene, and then the close loss to Oregon State last Saturday. But Cody, what were your preliminary thoughts on these games? What'd you think?
Well, first, I pretty much, nailed it right on the head with that Oregon game. I was feeling really good about myself, thinking I could go 2 for 2, but was not able to. But, that's all right. But, that Oregon game was, everything that a Cougar fan would want to see from their team. They did, everything right. It was a little shocking coming out and seeming to be the next iteration of the Golden State Warriors only shooting threes, but they figured it out and they just played a solid, complete, well-rounded game. And that's probably, that is what this team looks like when they're functioning on all cylinders, when they're doing everything that they have to do and are able to do. And then you saw on the opposite hand against Oregon State when they're doing almost everything wrong, other than playing some pretty good defense, but the shooting just wasn't there. They weren't able to capitalize on stuff, and the game luckily was closer than it should have been, thanks to Oregon State. Seemingly not wanting to put it away at the end, but I think you saw really the best this team can look and close to kind of what the worst it could look, especially in terms of making shots and just, when Isaac Bonton has a bad game, unless somebody else drops 25, they're probably going to lose. It's just, the nature of this team. Luckily, Isaac Bonton doesn't have a lot of bad games, but, when he does struggle, like, this team's going to have to do a lot more to make up for that.
Yeah, you kind of touched on all cylinders there. The Oregon game, I was definitely surprised of the victory. You did call it good right there before the game.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great game. I mean, they were in the lead for the vast majority of the game. Oregon just seemed all out of sorts. Now, granted, they played, I want to say 1 or 2 games in the past month. So
yeah,
I understand, not much chemistry like brewing at the moment. The gears aren't turning at the moment. Because I don't think they really practiced much during that.
No, they weren't. They weren't able to practice really either. So yeah, it was definitely tough for them.
Yeah, and Oregon had a pair of canceled games against UCLA this past week. They were going to play UCLA twice in like a 3-game span or something like that. Both those games were canceled. So Oregon has had a ton of issues from COVID. So I'll take the first ever win in Matthew Knight Arena for sure, because that's just added to Kyle Smith's his list of accomplishments for his first tenure here at WSU. But Oregon State was one that kind of shocked me. I know Oregon State was kind of on a run for these past couple of games. They were, I believe, like 4-2 right before the game, and they worked on more of a balanced scoring attack, and they definitely got WSU kind of out of nowhere, if you ask me. WSU was trailing for a good chunk of the game, and like you said, if Bonton has a bad game, unless someone else steps up, nothing else can really happen. And WSU did have their sophomore players kind of shine for him. Ryan Rapp, out of all people, leading the team in scoring, which was great.
I think he led the game, maybe. It was 15, because Oregon State didn't do much either.
Yeah, he was up there and he was making plays off the bench, which was funny because I remember seeing him taking a free throw early in the game, and Pac-12 Network puts up his stats up on the screen and they're like, "Oh, he averages 1.5 points a game." I'm like, why are you gonna do him dirty like this? Maybe Rapp just felt that telepathically and he's like, "I'm gonna score 15 tonight." But him and Rodman had good games. Noah Williams had, I believe, another double-digit performance. But there's very few pros you can take from the game. It was very close, but literally if Bonton makes 2 or 3 shots, it would have been a WSU win, right? Granted, by everything else falling into place. But I was pretty disappointed with OSU, and of course we'll get to the Dishon Jackson injury in our next segment here. But what did you think of the bench performance, or sorry, not the bench performances, the sophomore performances from Rodman and Rapp?
I think for Rodman, it was a continuation of kind of what we've seen since he's come back from that injury. He's looked really solid, and he's starting to become a guy that can be a little bit of an offensive hub. He can do more than just shoot threes. He's able to drive and get some shots up in there. So I think that's really good going forward, of just, with Bonton and then, throw in Noah Williams, increased offensive ability. They don't need 15 point, 18 point per game scores anymore. They need the guys who can get 8 to 12, that can chip in when they need to. And I think Rodman has that ability to fill that role perfectly. So I think that's really good to see. And Rapp, obviously, he's been valuable to this team all year when he's been available, not even based on his scoring, just based on his ability to be a really consistent ball handler and playmaker. He can run the offense really well, and he's not going to turn the ball over. So, if you start throwing in his ability to hit some threes and make some plays, then I think, that is just added on to what he has already been able to do. He has his role as kind of that third guard, first guard off the bench. So, if he's able to hit some threes, then that's just awesome. But yeah, I mean, I there was a lot of good, I think, to come from that kind of in spurts. And I mean, like you said, it was a few shots away from being a win, and really was only as close as it was because that Oregon State player decided to foul everybody at the end of the game when it just wasn't necessary. So, Oregon State was not trying to win that game, but, WSU, when you have a bad shooting performance like that, have your best player, just struggle offensively and still be able to stay in the game, just says a lot to kind of what this team can do. And especially the defense. Noah Williams did a great job on, their two good scorers. And so, the reality is you probably don't see the offense perform like that very often, hopefully not in the future. So I think that it's more good than bad, even though it was a tough loss.
Yeah, the real X factor of it is the poor performance from Bonton, and you almost kind of feel bad to see a bad performance from Bonton against an Oregon State school. And I mean, he was undefeated against Oregon schools his entire time here at WSU until this last game. I'm sure that he took this loss harder than anyone else on this team. I mean, Kyle Smith finally lost his first game against a Pacific Northwest school, which now he's 14-1 instead of could have been 15-0. But yeah, I think it was Alatish off of Oregon State that had those two late fouls. I mean, I'm sitting there covering the game thinking, okay, this one seems to be, chalked up. But Alatish has the first foul. I'm like, okay, it's a little strange, whatever. He has the second foul. I'm like, this is gonna be a topic on SportsCenter if they throw this away. There's no way that this is happening. And it went down to a final shot from Rodman. He didn't get it off in time, and it didn't make it regardless. But that's at least something to take note of, that this game was close, but it was going to be a 7-point, 6-point victory from Oregon State if Alatish, didn't have any, or it had any sort of late game awareness in terms of late game defense. But it wasn't a pretty game. I, of course, would love to have more games like the Oregon game on last Thursday, but can't win them all, right? Cougs are 11-8 now. They're trying their hardest to get up the seedings of the standings to try to get a good spot before the conference tournament starts. But one of the largest takeaways, or if you ask me, probably the largest takeaway from that game, is the injury for Dishon Jackson, freshman center from Vallejo, California. The moment this happened, I'm like, oh no, this is, WSU had a little momentum going with the Oregon game, and they had a back and forth sort of contest throughout the first half with Oregon State, and then Dishon Jackson goes down, which it doesn't look incredibly severe. I'll give it that. But no details have been disclosed about his injury yet, and he's doubtful to return this week. You could pretty much chalk it up. He won't play these two back-to-back home games. But, where does WSU go from here about Dishon Jackson going down with injury?
Yeah, and I mean, it from what we saw is an ankle injury, just, rolled, sprained his ankle, whatever. And we saw DJ Rodman miss, obviously combined with some COVID stuff, but miss a while with a high ankle sprain. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think we see Dishon Jackson this week, and, who knows when he's able to come back. But I think the thing that hurts and, going forward is that, people might be thinking, oh, how does WSU replace Dishon Jackson? How do they kind of get what they were getting from him out of somebody else? And the answer is just that you don't. There is nobody on that team that can do what he does in terms of low post scoring and just that size in the middle. You can put Markovetsky in there, but his offense just isn't there yet. And looking at the games coming up, with some really athletic bigs and a UCLA team that runs a lot of guards, I think the best bet is to do what we saw at the start of the year: move FA back down to center and go with a small lineup maybe against UCLA, and then maybe Yakimovsky or Kuntz kind of in that 4 role with Rodman staying at the 3 coming up, because that two big offense I think works with Dishon and FA, but I think this team, there's no replacement for him. You've got to go small again, move FA back down, and I think something that could come out of that is it might open up some lanes kind of, driving for Bonton and Noah Williams, who are, they can both shoot, but they're really their best getting to the basket. And when you put Dishon Jackson, who is, in the paint type 5, and FA, who can shoot, but also, kind of stays down there, I think it gets kind of cramped. So, obviously I'm not happy that Dishon Jackson is out, but I think, we may be able to see kind of some new wrinkles to this offense. And I hope to see that they go smaller and that they kind of embrace that, especially with who they've got coming up. I know that UCLA team runs small, but yeah, it's definitely going to be huge because he was a great low post scorer, their only low post scorer really on the team that could do that with any consistency, and a great rebounder. So it's definitely going to hurt, but I think they have to take this, and for as long as he's out, just embrace a different style of play, because I don't think you can replicate what he was able to do.
Yeah, you kind of took all the thoughts out of my mouth there, but I want to get to kind of the lineup adjustment that WSU is going to have to make. Mm-hmm. And I think some people are predicting that Vova is going to be the starting 5 with FA at the starting 4 if they want to keep FA at that 4 position. But I agree with you. You can read more about it in my column for Sports Pack 12, where I talk specifically in detail about Dishon's injury and how it's going to affect WSU. But I think they go small with their lineup as well. I think they'll have FA at the 5, and they'll go. I think they'll go Kuntz at the 4 with him mm-hmm. playing decent as of late, and him coming back off of brief 1-game injury. He has experience starting for the team. I think having him as a stretch 4 could help this team out. I don't think mm-hmm. Yakimovsky is ready for the starting lineup again mm-hmm. after kind of a subpar past couple the past 2 games against the Oregon schools. And you go Rodman at the 3. So, Bonton, Williams, those are set in stone. You got Rodman at the 3, Kuntz at the 4, and FA mm-hmm. at the 5. I don't trust Vova to start. No. I could go on and on all day about how Vova is, not the same caliber type player as Dishon Jackson is. Mm-hmm. Vova has the 7'1", 270-pound frame to stand there in front of some Pac-12 bigs, but even then, if someone takes a step around him, he's not going to be able to get to him. It's kind of like what was that tackle for the Cougs? Cody O'Connell, massive 6'8", mm-hmm. like 380-pound man. Yeah, he's real great if you run into him. If you take a step to the side, he's not going to get to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just look at the matchup. This, USC has Evan Mobley, who's probably the best player in the conference.
And the Mobley brothers are going to terrorize him. Yeah.
I mean, they already were going to, no matter who's playing. But, I mean, no way in hell Markovetsky's guarding them, because that's just not the type of guy he is. He can play in that Oregon State game against another, big traditional type guy, some of that Oregon stuff. But, you just got to play the matchups. He will get in there and he'll get some time because he's a huge body, and they'll, play some zone around him. But, I mean, you've got to go matchups here. And Evan Mobley is just too good. And so, I mean, FA's going to struggle guarding him. Dishon would have struggled guarding him because he's that good. But, I think especially when you look at the matchups, regardless of who they were playing, I think that probably was going to be their best bet. But, especially looking at those matchups, I don't think there's another option.
Yeah, and the UCLA pick and roll IQ with Tiger Campbell is going to give Vova nightmares if he's a starting five. Now, granted, if he is a starting five, I don't think he's going to play probably over 20 minutes that game, or maybe 20 minutes exactly. He's not playing, Bonton Williams minutes.
Yeah.
But Tiger Campbell he's going to abuse Vova there down low and get some very easy very easy assisted baskets for UCLA that put up 91 points against the Cougs their last time out. So Vova doesn't start, and I think you may even see some more. You can tell me what you think about this. I think you may see a hint of more time for Chatfield in these next couple of games. And Tony Miller's been battling his ongoing injury throughout the season, so you probably will see, 4 or 5 minutes from him, depending on how much he's able to play with his, I believe it's an ongoing hip injury or something like that. But tell me what you think about Chatfield potentially getting some more minutes this upcoming game.
I mean, I think that will probably happen just based on losing any player means you're losing 4 or 5 fouls. The WSU bigs have been, FA, they've gotten, I want to say they have foul issues. We saw that kind of at the start of the year. They don't get in early foul trouble. It's just when you play a lot, as a big, sometimes you foul out towards the end of the game. But, I think especially because now if you're looking, they have FA and Vova and who else? You can't, you have to have more fouls than that. So, I think we might see Chatfield, which scares me because I just don't think his defense is there. We saw it really early in the season. I think it was against Eastern Washington where they could just post him up. So, this USC game obviously is scary with the talented bigs that they have, but there's going to have to be another big that goes in there just to soak up some fouls. So we could see Tony Miller get thrown back in when he's maybe not fully ready, like what happened kind of earlier in the season, when they lose some guys. But yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to have more bigs than that. So we probably will see some Chatfield, and hopefully that he can do enough, just throw some fouls at a guy, maybe, do what he can. But, I don't expect anything too crazy from him.
Well, the one thing you're going to get from Chatfield as opposed to Vova is you're going to get a hint, at the very least, you're going to get a hint of more offensive, talent from Chatfield than you would with Vova. I mean, Vova, like we said, is a big body. He can get the occasional board if Bonton's not getting double the rebounds that Vova's getting. But Chatfield's got at least somewhat of an offensive presence. He is still just a redshirt freshman. He's kind of a long-term project for this WSU roster, and I'm excited to see where he is at his peak. But Dishon goes down, it's the next man up is kind of the mentality of any real basketball team. Once your guys are down, it's next man up, and you got to fill in as the best that you can. Kuntz, I don't think will have a hard time on that starting lineup, and he'll probably be in and out with Yakumovsky at that 4 position. Like I said, I don't think Tony Miller is going to be 100% probably for the rest of the year. It seems I don't think it. I completely whiffed on my prediction that he was going to be the second leading scorer on this team. Did not know he was going to have this much of an ongoing injury, but I'm not going to see much of Tony. So Chatfield's next up, and I don't think you may not think that Chatfield's ready. I don't think Rosario's really ready either. I mean, Rosario's barely played any minutes, and he's not quite ready. But he's not what I believe he was a borderline 4-star recruit, if not a 4-star recruit for the Cougs. So he'll get there as well. But Chatfield's the next man up, if you ask me, on the bench side of things. But in terms of the starters, FA is going to be that 5. FA is going to get a lot more touches these next couple of games, I think. And, they're not going to be able to settle for threes from FA. FA, you can take a handful of threes, but if I see 6 3-pointers and 2 layup attempts, then I'm going to lose my mind, Yeah. With FA having these big time dunks these past couple of games, ride that momentum as much as you can against UCLA and USC, the LA teams, if you will. You got to ride as much as you can. So we might as well talk about the games coming up in a little bit more of a broader sense. But WSU defeated UCLA in their home contest last season in a overtime thriller led by Bonton, and really a fun bench performance from Ryan Rapp, who only put up, I want to say, 4 points that game last year. But he came into the game and made a handful of plays that at the time when there was a crowd there, I mean, the crowd went nuts for, this freshman from Australia that was just, making the pass or making the easy layup. He gave WSU momentum to put UCLA away at home for the first time in a couple years.
Was that the overtime game?
It was the overtime game. That's why I want to say. That's why Bonton kind of led the charge in overtime. He was putting up some Kobe-like jumpers in overtime.
The nice corner three from Ellaby to was it to force it or to win it? I don't remember. I think it was to force it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was one of the most entertaining games aside from some dude named Klay Thompson having his jersey retired. But it's one of the most entertaining games of the year last year. And if you ask me, I won't get into too much detail yet. I want to ask you about your opinion first, but I think we may see a potential upset in this home contest against UCLA. I like this matchup in terms of I think WSU has some confidence going into this game hosting UCLA this time. Tell me what you think.
I don't think that. I think that what is happening is these are the two best teams in the Pac-12, and USC is a little hotter than UCLA. UCLA just lost to USC, but I mean, they both have 2 conference losses. These are teams that have just figured it out and are playing well. And, if WSU had played well against Oregon State, then I may be a little more inclined to lean into the momentum. But, the offense just looked bad in that game. And the fact that that's a possibility is scary. And so, what they did against Oregon was really good. But, maybe they used all their offense for the week then. So, I just... If it was another team, maybe in Arizona or even, a Stanford or somebody that wasn't at the top of the conference, then I could see it a little better. But I just, I just don't see them coming out with a win in either of these. I want to see it. I think that it's possible, and UCLA definitely has a better chance of getting upset, I think, because, in the last game they just shot like crazy. They couldn't miss. And you're never going to beat a team when they put up 90 in, 40 minutes. So it's possible. They're going to have to play some really good defense. I think, especially with Dishon's injury, they match up better now that they'll have to go small. Hopefully they embrace that because UCLA runs like 4 guards. But yeah, I just can't see them getting a win this week because the 2 best teams in the conference. And so, and there's just too many questions and too many, I think, holes in this team at the moment.
Well, if you ask me, I think probably the underlying factor of this game is Bonton's not going to want to have 2 bad performances in a row. I think Bonton's going to go a little crazy in this game. I'm suspecting probably a 25-plus point performance from him. There's no chance that he's going to have another, or he's going to want to have another 2 and 14 night, scoring only 7 points against an Oregon school at that. So I think Bonton comes into this game angry, and Williams is going to have a lot of energy as well, just like he does in whether he's playing UCLA or some D3 school. He's always going to have that tenacity and that competitiveness. Those 2 are settled. It's going to come. FA is probably going to have, a ton of touches. I don't know if he'll have a tremendous game, so to speak, but he'll have a ton of touches. It's going to be a lot on those 3, I think, because I think with all of the momentum that Rodman's been putting together, Rapp's been putting together, even Kuntz has been putting together a little bit, getting back from injury and getting some more rhythm going. I think they're going to kind of pan out and produce in their own right. Jakubowski will slowly but surely get back into the flow of things, but it's really going to come down to these top 3 guys in Bonton, Williams, and FA to try to put together. I don't think this is going to have to be a defensive heavy performance from WSU. I think it's going to have to be, this is going to be a shootout. Right? If they're going to want to compete with UCLA, I don't think there's any real stopping UCLA's offense with the personnel that WSU has. So they're going to have to try to shoot it out with them. And there's a potential. If I had to give a percentage of an upset victory, I'll go 15%. So not high, but potentially there. In terms of USC, granted, we're probably not going to have Dishon Jackson on Saturday either, and it'll be FA and Vova having to match up against the Mobley brothers, which just sounds awful on paper, considering Dishon Jackson had his career night against USC. So that's out of. I mean, USC was probably going to want to play a little tighter on Dishon Jackson this time around to avoid that good performance from him. And if they have that same mentality on Vova, then Vova's going to have 5 turnovers. It's not even going to be fathomable. USC I see as a double-digit loss, regardless of it being at home. It's going to be another punch to the gut. I mean, USC and Stanford are just a pair of schools that we're never going to have the upper hand on for at least a couple of seasons until we get some more, recruiting and more, comfort with the system we got in place. But what are your brief thoughts on the USC game?
I mean, I agree. I just think, that's a more talented team. That's a hotter team. It's just a better team. They just got
ranked as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they've won, 5 straight, I think, in conference. They're up there tied with UCLA, and I just think, they've already matched up favorably for them against this WSU team, and so, I just don't see what points in WSU's direction. I'm sure there's a shot, I mean, if you can put up enough points, look at it's what the Brooklyn Nets are doing in the NBA. If you can put up enough points, it doesn't matter what you're doing on the other side. And so, if every player on WSU scores 15 points, then they'll probably win. But, I just don't – WSU just doesn't have the offensive firepower to put up – to hang in with these teams that can just get whatever shot. And so I think that'll be what happens against USC, and I think that could also be what happens against UCLA if their offense comes to play like they did last time. But yeah, I mean, it's just a tough time to draw these teams. When WSU got a little bit of momentum and was maybe starting to build something, and then to draw these 2 top teams in the same week, it just sucks, and it's just how it goes out. But I mean, they're looking to play spoiler. They're looking to get an upset, and whenever you have a guy like Isaac Bonton who can drop 30, and Noah Williams, who I don't think will ever stop fighting anything until he's forced or physically removed. So you've got scrappers, you've got guys who aren't going to give up, and so there's a shot, but it's not looking good for them. But they're playing with house money. They've got nothing to lose. Go get an upset.
Yeah, I also hope. I know he was out with a toothache out of all things, but I really hope that TJ Bamba has an impact in this game as well. And he's missed the past couple of games with a toothache that apparently affected him so much he couldn't play.
Didn't they say on the broadcast he had to get it removed or something? I don't know if I heard that.
I don't know if I heard something like that. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised with how, Smith described him as, he's always, wants to practice, always wants to play, always wants to scrimmage. He's very, very aggressive. Apparently this toothache was messing him up so much that he just could not play. So hopefully he's over that, and he can at least he can play some minutes and try to grind away at these LA teams. But I really hope I see him in one of these games, if not both.
Yeah.
But that is all the time that we have for today's show, talking about WSU basketball. You can find all of our written content exclusively on sportspac12.com. You'll find columns written by me about the WSU basketball team. I recently wrote about the Dishon Jackson injury and how it's going to affect the team. You can find those every week. And you can follow Sports Pac-12 on Twitter at SportsPac12. You can find links to our written content on our website, dashsports.tv. And make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at DashSportsTV. Lastly, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dash Sports, where you can find all of our shows and clips. And you can tune in next time at the same time next week. You can keep in touch with my Twitter tonight for the Cougs game against UCLA at 8:00. I believe airs on FS1. You can keep in touch with my live tweets throughout the game. And I'm going to plug my Dishon Jackson feature as well while I'm at it. Just had a Dishon Jackson feature come out for the for the WSU school newspaper. Check that out to read a really interesting story. Yeah, real interesting story about Dishon Jackson there. Give that a read. I'd really appreciate it. But you can find us